All right, we're gonna give this a try again. Welcome back. This is Sage Hayes. We're doing Hive Live again. Great, we're live, so that's awesome. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. Really excited to be here in the town that I've lived in for quite a long time, and interviewing some of my favorite people, some of the most transformational colleagues that I know. Some of the best people on the planet and some of the best organizations on the planet. So today I'm really excited. We're broadcasting from Birthroots here in Portland, Maine, and I'm with Shannon Fisher Mackey.
Hi.
Super excited to be here with you today. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things, but the title, our kind of intention is to really get at what does deep choice mean. What does deep choice mean within the context of a variety of different sort of health threads? Or, well, I don't know. We'll see what we're going to talk about. So, anyways, this is the launch of the Hive directory. And the Hive directory is a online directory. We're building, sort of reframing and revisioning what transformative and alternative health is, and creating a directory so that local practitioners in your community can create listings so that we can find each other, right? And so that people can find us. So check out the Hive directory. That's at thehivedirectory.net. Enough of that. Welcome to Hive Live.
Hi.
Super excited to be here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. First thing I just want to ask is just give us a little snapshot of who you are and
Sure.
yeah, thanks.
So I'm Shannon Fisher Mackey. I grew up in Massachusetts a long time ago, and I moved to Maine to go to college, and then I never left. I've worked in reproductive health and justice on some form or on some level since 1999, which is a long time to do something, but I've done all sorts of different fun things within that.
Mm-hmm.
And right now we're at Birthroots, where I teach a couple different classes. I teach our Sprouts class, which is working with parents who have 3 to 9 month olds, and the developmental milestones within that, about being a parent and the things that your kid will do or will not do. And then I teach a baby basics class here, where we work with parents who have not yet had their babies, talking about just the basics about what it is that you might need in order to successfully make it through those first 8 to 12 weeks postpartum.
All you mamas out there, I'm sure.
And papas, yeah,
and papas.
Totally big deal.
Totally.
Life-changing events there. And I do our baby breastfeeding basics class here, and what else do I do? I serve on the board. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
So I love Birthroots.
Yeah, right
and
on.
I work for Maine Family Planning as an abortion care specialist, and I've worked in abortion care my entire career, and that is one of the things that we definitely can talk about more about. And then I also work at a sexuality boutique, so sort of run the spectrum around sex, reproduction, and parenting. Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole thread.
Totally. And you're a parent.
I am. Oh, that's right. Sorry.
No, it's all
I'm a mom.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I'm a mom. I have a 3-year-old daughter. Her name is Millie, who is fabulous. And I also have a husband. His name is Joe, who is also fabulous. And yeah, so we are just living it.
Yeah.
Making it happen.
Yeah. I mean, what if like you literally do all those three, you live in those three sort of work worlds.
Yes.
Reproductive health, sexuality boutique, and parenting classes, baby classes here at Birthroots.
Yes.
That's amazing. I'm so excited to have you on because of that and because of your history. You know, Shannon and I met at 1999 probably, back working at the I don't even know what it's called then.
Was it Outright?
Well, it could have been Outright, but we actually, the Maine Youth Action Network.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so
That's right.
in my youth organizing days, you were working for the Maine Youth Action Network.
Yep.
Yeah.
I worked as a after-school program specialist. I don't even remember the tech. God, that was a long time ago.
How many iterations have we all had?
I know, right? It feels like different pockets of, like, people say chapters, but it's just like a completely different lifetime ago.
Right.
But yeah, I ran an after-school program at one of the subsidized housing neighborhoods in Portland.
Oh, cool.
And so that was my gig.
Great,
when
great.
we were doing Mayan stuff.
That's right. Right on. Before we jump kind of into deeper content, I just want to name, this is a big week to be talking about all these things, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and we talked about it yesterday with Ann Helfrich, but I just want to name it before we begin because it's such a full experience for so many people out there. So as that comes up, if it comes up,
I think that's to come up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not only is it affecting, so this big week, I'm assuming you mean the inauguration of that man, and all of the changes that will bring. It touches everybody. I mean, from parents here who on the day after Election Day were here, we were holding space for that so that folks could have a safe place to talk about what does it mean to parent in a time where hatred and bigotry, racism, homophobia, Islamophobia, you name it, is not only at the surface, but it's actually leading the way. Is really challenging for so many families.
So you literally, the day after the election, you opened the doors here at Birthroots, and families and parents came in.
Yes.
And you guys held space.
Yes.
And people showed up.
People came. Yep, absolutely. And then the following class that I ran for Sprouts, which was the 3 to 9 month old class, we had mamas in that group who just didn't know, they did not know how to do this, how to parent in this world. And one of the things that we were able to break down was that there's always going to be an it. There's always going to be a big scary. There's always going to be something that challenges your capacity to function in a healthy way, and in a really genuine, authentic way. There'll be something for everyone, and this is one of those times where there's a big scary. So one of the really most important things about Birthroots was that we realized that, we need to maintain, we need to be Switzerland, but we also needed to honor the fact that many of our families were struggling. So that was a really important part of being here. Yeah,
well, thanks for holding that space. I think we're going to need to keep doing that in all the different ways that we all can do that. So such good modeling for community organization to get out of your programming and open up the doors
and say, come have tea or coffee and just talk about what is. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And from someone who provides abortion care and more. Oh, there was a thumb.
Thumbs up. It's so cute. That happens, right? Hearts and thumbs happen when somebody likes what you're saying. So you'll see them go across. It's super fun.
That was really brilliant.
Because there's 20 people watching. Holy crap.
That's hysterical. I love this project. So
look at.
Oh my god. Hi. Happy things. Oh my god. Love it. Keep going. You're doing great. Oh, that's awesome. So as from a perspective of this being a big week, from an abortion care standpoint, so I also work for the Maine Family Planning Association, Maine Family Planning Association, and on a big programmatic level, if Title X, which is the program that subsidizes reproductive health care for people who cannot afford it, gets slashed or touched in any way or decimated, forget about abortion care. We're talking about straight up health care goes away for so many people who access Maine Family Planning as their only source of health care.
Because those are federal dollars.
Yes, so federal dollars support Title X, which is reproductive health and birth control. That does not subsidize or in any way touch abortion care. Those two things, the Hyde Amendment in 1978 made that impossible, which is what it is, for good or for bad. That's just the situation. So when people talk about defunding Planned Parenthood or anything like that, what they're really talking about is taking away cancer screening and access to birth control and cancer treatment and prevention. So cervical cancer and treatment
to the people who
need it the most. Who are the most needy is the only word that's coming to mind, but that is not what I mean. I mean who have the least amount of access
to resources.
So I also had a baby 3 years ago and lost my capacity for making sentences.
Totally.
So there you go.
Well, we all have a lot of permission for that.
Yeah.
I mean, and even just the work we're doing and all that we're holding in our psyches right now. I mean, it's hard to actually put a sentence together. Totally. So no worries.
Yeah.
Let's kind of I want to kind of just dip a little bit into, like, could you tell, if, again, knowing that your brain is mama brain, like, could you tell us, like, a little story about why you came to the work that you do?
Sure.
Like, what inspired you, or your own journey?
Yeah, so I had someone very important to me in my life tell me their own story about having an abortion in the late 60s when it was not legal. And I was probably in my teens when that happened. And I remember thinking, that's completely effed up that was something that was not accessible to you. That birth control wasn't accessible to her. She was a young woman, and she wanted to have sex with the person she was with, which is a completely normal thing. So I remember that story sort of drove my story. And I was really committed to making sure that access was something that people had. And so I started working a long time ago for Mabel Wadsworth Women's Health Center up in Bangor, Maine. Ruth Lockhart was the executive director, and she showed me the way. She showed me my way. She opened a door for me at a time where I was just a kid. I was like 22 in high school. That would be no, in college.
I was in elementary school
back in 1922. So I started working there.
What's like if it comes up, like, what's one thing she taught you that you kind of bring with you today?
To sit down.
What do you mean?
She taught me to learn. She taught me that my voice wasn't the only voice that needed to be heard in a room. And why that was important is because, as fiery as I was about the topic, I didn't know anything about how care got provided. I didn't understand any of the background around Title X or grant funding or STD grants that help people who don't have any access, or HIV prevention at the time, which we had Ryan White money then. So I didn't know any of the how this happened. I only knew that I wanted it to happen. And so she was really amazing at being able to say, why don't you listen? And when you're done listening, then you can open your hands and do some of this work. But right now, you need to listen. And so as I've progressed in my career, that has always been both a challenge and also something that I feel like I can do fairly well. It's just, okay, I'm just going to listen here. I don't need to be the only voice speaking. So. Well,
I think it's such a powerful teaching, right? And it's such a powerful teaching for so many of us for so many reasons. I think about, as a white person in the past bunch of years, like, how much, of course I want to undo racism. Of course I want to,
Yeah, I'm a feminist, right? Like, and I want you to hear that. I want the world to hear that. But
right. But there's just this piece that is about deeply listening, deeply learning, way before you even think about opening your mouth.
Yes.
And then the other piece about that is also, I think you said, is like, that don't be the only voice in the room. Like, there's so many other voices, and look toward the margins for the voices too, right? Because,
and in that particular situation, Ruth, I mean, she's like second wave feminist, like, had just come, I mean, like, she had it. She had the knowledge, and she was so gracious about sharing it, and so gracious about staffing her health center in a way that was equitable and fair and just and good. And so I really wanted to make a difference, right? And so she was really great at being able to just be like, just understand the history first, and then go for it, right? Like, yeah. So putting the reins, I guess it was a bit of putting the reins on some of my fiery passion, but it really was able to extend that passion into a career and into a lifetime. So I'm eternally grateful to her for that. So.
And it's a career that is it's a beautiful, amazing, inspiring career, but also pretty rugged. Some days, yeah.
Yep. I think sometimes, well, first of all, no one wants to talk about abortion care, right? Like, we can just put that on the table. Like, saying abortion at your dinner table may not happen. It does at my house, because that's the work that I do. My kiddo doesn't know what I do for a job, other than I go to a doctor's office, and I work in a doctor's office, and I help women. And eventually she will know. And I'm not afraid of that. I just think at an age appropriate time.
Yeah.
We'll have those conversations. And so, so I help women. So there are days where I do a job that no one else does. And I get that. And by no one, I mean very few people. There are ways in the abortion community, you sort of know the people who are doing the job, right? There are just a couple thousand of us across the country that do this work. And so I think sometimes the ruggedness is the isolation piece, where you're just like, I can't actually tell you what happened at my job today because you don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Because you, the collective you, doesn't want to know what happens in an abortion clinic, or thinks they know what happens in an abortion clinic, and it's completely the opposite.
So can we talk a little bit about that? Because I mean, that's part of what we're doing here on Hive Live, and actually what I think we should all be doing is, sort of getting underneath the sort of themes that are defined by the mainstream, or even by the mainstream on Facebook, and starting to have more real conversations about what is what.
Yeah.
With real people and real feelings.
Yeah.
And not trying to just get it, but also trying to slow it down so that people can have their experience, whether it's upset or distress or, or sadness from an experience that, maybe have had an abortion. Like, there's just not a lot of space and not a lot of validation to talk about it. And it's so real.
It is too, and I think what it comes down to, and we can certainly go into what happens during my day when I'm in the clinic, as we can definitely.
Well, what I want to do is I want to talk about what you think is the most important thing to talk about. Like, what we know a lot of people are going to be watching this, so like from your perspective, like what are some things that people don't know that you'd like people to know?
I tell my patients every day that I love them, and that they're worthy, and that they deserve good health care. I think that because abortion care is marginalized and put to the margins, people assume that the care they're going to get is also marginal.
That's so deep.
And it's not. It is probably the best quality health care that many of our patients receive in their lifetime. And so if I could tell anybody anything, it would be that, which is not only are you going to be cared for in a medical way, because this is a medical procedure, just like if you were to go to the dentist and get your wisdom teeth out, there are people who are professionals who know how to do that job. That is us. We know how to do this job. But you are going to be loved and supported. And that I love this phrase that one of our providers said to me recently was, we're going to bring the floor up to meet you. And so that's what we do for our patients, is we just bring the floor up to meet them wherever that is. And we have patients from all walks of life, from all races, all religions, everyone.
All classes,
everyone. 47% of Americans have an abortion. 47%. So
47%
of women
who
have had an abortion and will, or in the United States. It's almost half of women have had an abortion.
I had no idea.
Nobody does, because we never talk about it. It's so ridiculous.
47% of women in the United States have had or will have an abortion.
Have had, statistically have had.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
sometimes it because it's hard, and this data is only accessed. We pretty much update our data. I think it's like every 8 years. It runs from 43 to 47%, depending on who's in office.
Totally
does.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of people who access abortion care, and who deserve really high quality care.
So, what is the state of abortion care today? Like in Maine, I know you can only speak from your perspective.
Sure.
What's the state of the actuality of the care, maybe a little bit politically?
Yeah.
I just read this morning that like in Texas, they're trying to pass a bill that outlaws abortion, and it's trying to prosecute the women who are.
There's a federal ban actually being put forth now, that would make it impossible for people who need abortions. I default to women, but there are plenty of people who do not identify as women who receive abortion care both in my health center and across the country, and world. So I just want to be clear about that.
Thank you.
Yes. So what?
Yeah, right. Like who?
What?
So we're just talking about the state of abortion care.
So in Maine.
Yeah.
So, okay, so what we were talking about is there's a federal, Stephen King, he's a representative, he just put up a bill to ban abortions before 6 weeks, which is asinine because people don't know they're pregnant before, that's almost unheard of. 6 weeks is generally when we start to see people at our health center. In fact, we can't really see someone who's less than that because we can't see what we're looking for because cells are very small.
Yep.
So there.
Right.
Stephen King.
Yeah.
But in the state of Maine, abortion care is legal. If you are a minor, you don't need to have parental consent. You need to have basically the consent of a licensed provider. And so, which is excellent. And we don't have many restrictions that so many of the other states in the United States have, or countries in the world have.
Thanks to organizers and activists amazing organizations like Maine Family Planning, like Planned Parenthood, but also like our lobbyist. She's phenomenal, Kate Brogan. I mean, you don't get better than Kate. I mean, she's just been great, and senators trust her, and congresspeople trust her and trust her knowledge base. So we have really great laws. We don't have any waiting periods. We don't have, and I want to knock wood. Like, I basically don't want to be saying this out loud. We live in a great state. But I recently just did some work with folks from Provide, which is an abortion access network that's based in Massachusetts, and they work all over the country, primarily in the South, where, I mean, waiting periods that's just the name of the game. That's part of the thing. Trap laws, which require physicians to have operating room hospital privileges, which is completely unnecessary. Like 99% of the time, it's completely unnecessary to have any kind of hospital backup. Just don't. It's such a safe procedure. It's such a safe procedure.
Oh yeah. It is, when done in a
with the right
legitimate,
conditions.
In a medical facility, it is most certainly a safe procedure. Comes in second to having your wisdom teeth out. So it's like, wisdom teeth is the most popular.
Most popular, Jesus.
I know, right?
That is not true.
Not
we don't
word.
even need to fact check that.
Nope. Thumbs down. It's the most common surgery done in the United States. And then second is having a termination.
Yeah.
So yeah, super safe. And should be accessible. Because what I've seen in my life, okay, to transition to this part,
love it,
is that people cannot be forced to be parents. And in fact, I remember standing in my kitchen with a screaming infant, thinking to myself, and it landed so hard, oh my God, if someone told me I had to do this, I would not, there's no way that I would have the capacity to do it. It has to be a choice.
Yeah.
I got to choose to have my kid. That was amazing. That it was something that my husband and I came to this understanding. This was what we wanted to do, and that I had chosen to stand in that kitchen carrying that screaming 2-week-old around, tired, dirty, smelly. You were there. Gross. I was a mess, but I had chosen it, and therefore it gave me a sense of empowerment that I could do it. People can't be forced to be parents. And so one of the things that I see the most often at my job is that women who are choosing to have a termination are doing so because they know that they have to be able to take care of the children that they already have. More often than not, that's the case. Or that they need to be able to continue on the path that will bring them the most capacity in their life. And so yeah, there's a huge part of this that is about making sure that people are never forced into parenthood. Because I honestly don't think that you could parent well.
Yep, for sure.
Without that sense of I'm doing this. I said I wanted to do this. I can do this.
Yep.
We're gonna get through this. But if someone had told me in that moment that if I hadn't made that choice, I can see how it could go all very, very wrong. So that's part of why I do the work, is because I don't believe that anyone should be forced to be a parent when they're not ready to.
What do you feel like? I totally agree. What do you feel like one of the roots is of the anti-abortion, like the adamant anti-abortion movement?
Well, I think it's multifaceted. primarily I feel like because it's women who have abortions, that there's a sense that it should be regulated, that somehow women would just be like willy-nilly having abortions left and right. I've never met anyone in all of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that I've worked with who actually really wanted to be there, right? Like, it's not, people aren't stoked to have a termination.
Wouldn't imagine.
Right? It's hard. It's hard work. Getting a pregnancy from inside of a uterus to the other side, however, whether it's through miscarriage, delivery, or abortion, is hard. It sucks, and it's hard. Thankfully, a termination is quick. So I think that it's because it's women, and historically, we are not to be trusted, which is still devastating. We were on the phone the other night talking about what are we going to talk about, and it occurred to me recently after that person that just got elected he who shall not be named got elected. It occurred to me, I was like, oh, there are people who think that I don't have the capacity to make decisions for myself. And I'm an educated, upper middle class white person who identifies as a woman. And I don't have the capacity to make a decision for myself. And so I think abortion is one of those places where it's just okay for that to show up.
Yeah, I think on the phone you had also sort of said, which it sort of feels connected, was like, there's something about this moment in time that you said something like, it's never been more clear how, I think maybe you said sexism or against women is so clear, like just so crystal clear now.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm almost grateful for it. Great, put it on the table so we know what we're playing with. Like this is if sexism can change the way that healthcare gets delivered, if misogyny gets to change the way that healthcare gets delivered, like, at least we know what we're working with, right? Like, at least people are being honest about it finally for the first time. Like, no, it's because people don't think that women have the capacity to make the right decision for themselves or for their families. That's what it is. And so, yeah, I've never seen for myself, and I'm sorry if I'm getting late to the party, like, oh, they don't mean them, they mean me. All right, well, now it's a fight.
Right, so there's something about this that has there's a lot of people, especially people of color and poor people, that have said, like, yeah.
Right, duh. Where have you been?
Like, yeah, so there's been a lot of great writing that's sort of just been like, oh, finally, you guys, you upper middle class white people,
totally.
Like, yeah, welcome to the party.
Right, and I've been doing the work, and I'm queer, right? Like, so I'm not, like, I feel like I'm not, like, this...
Right. Like, total...
I'm not, like, in the dark about it.
Yeah.
But it really resonated.
Yeah.
It rang so clear.
Yeah.
And I really got it. I was like, oh, you mean all women. Every single person who has the capacity to be a parent. You want to be in charge of that. Not you, but you.
Yeah, they who shall not be named.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. So it's, that's sort of infusing your purpose and your practices and your beingness with a whole new, I don't know what you would say. I mean, not new, but...
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has given me a little bit more of, it sort of rekindled the embers. I mean, the embers have always been there. I've been doing this work for a really long time. But it has also encouraged me to connect the work that I do for Maine Family Planning with other work that I do. So the same people who have babies have abortions, have miscarriages, have. I mean, like, our obstetrical histories, the numbers of times that one has been pregnant very rarely matches the number of times that someone has delivered. And so the link between what I do for Maine Family Planning, what I do here at Birthroots, and what I do at the boutique, I mean, those are all the same people who are accessing different things at different times in their sexual lives. And so, yeah, I mean, it's all us. Like, abortion doesn't happen to them; it happens to us. It is a thing that is necessary in order for people to have healthy, productive lives.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's arguments against it. I know them all, but
can we talk? I don't know if you have. I'm sure you probably have things to say about this. I'm just gonna flip this up. I just want to talk one more particular thing about abortion care, and that's post care. Because as you know, that I'm very much into healing from difficult events and trauma and things like that, and how our body holds memory, and it kind of feels like that abortion could have a lot of very intense body experiences within it. So and because 47% of women are in biological bodied women have abortions, I think it would be really interesting just to talk a little bit about, like, can you talk a little bit about, like, the healing process? Now, I know everybody's different.
Sure, yeah.
But, like, what are some of the themes that, just because we know that there's people out there watching that...
Yeah, or helping.
You're helping.
Yeah, totally.
That maybe you're trying to support your own body or your sister's body, or in the healing process. Like, I shouldn't assume it's a healing process, but, like...
I think for some there's a healing
post-abortion process.
Sure. No, I think that's brilliant. My gosh. That's a question. I feel like that question's never been asked. It's awesome. So first and foremost, I think it's really important for folks to understand that when choosing to have a termination, the process of getting there to your actual appointment can be a long journey. Can be weeks of time, and that's great. That's totally great.
Got a little hard on that one.
And so kind of where I was going before is that people don't make this decision lightly. In fact, I've never met anyone who chooses to have a termination who's made this decision lightly. That may look different, but at least know that there's some commonality there. And so what we encourage after a termination is a continued process. That all of the processing that it took to make that appointment, there's now, on the other side of it, a whole length of processing that could or may need to happen. Most people who have a termination, I think, it's not just anecdotally, but I don't have the numbers, so I'll go with anecdotally, say that they feel relieved. And so it's rare that a person needs ongoing emotional support, but we also have that available. So if people need it and they're figuring out, like, hey, this is sort of a life-changing event, and I'm not sure how I want to process that, we have folks who can help with that. We have... Right,
so, and just to slow that down, that means you come in and you just talk about how you're doing with it, right? Just providing that space.
Well, there are national organizations. There's two amazing organizations, one called Exhale and one called Backline. Both are, you can call, you could be a provider. Wow. You could be a person who's had an abortion. You could be the partner of someone who's had an abortion, the mom, the dad. Like, they don't care. But you can call and just talk with someone about your experience with abortion.
That is amazing. What are those organizations again?
Exhale and Backline. And they're phenomenal. And started both by people who just saw a need for people to be able to process, not in a, I can't go on, I've had an abortion kind of way, but in a, I can't talk about this at my dinner table, so who the hell am I going to talk about this with?
Okay.
So setting up places where people can just have some objectivity, especially if they're coming from families that aren't supportive.
Absolutely.
So yeah, there's that piece is really important. So that piece is set up, and anyone who provides abortion care in the United States has access to that. And anyone who has an abortion obviously has access to that. But those are very well known in the abortion community as resources for folks. And there's an amazing group called Faith Aloud, and they may have just changed their name, but it's been Faith Aloud for so long, we'll go with that. Who are, if you are a person of faith and you come from a specific religion, you basically can call this number and ask to talk to someone who understands your faith.
Come on.
Nope, it's real.
That's amazing.
And who are supportive and are pro-choice, but also understand that it might be a hard decision, and it may not be congruous
of the beliefs and the principles and the practices of your faith or religion that you come from, so that you can have a real conversation that is, I don't know, just, but it's going to get you somewhere.
Yeah, and it also gives you some sort of framework or comfort. So if you're familiar with whatever, I grew up in a Catholic household, so for me, this would have been helpful maybe 112 years ago, but the framework of Catholicism, a pro-choice framework of Catholicism would have been extremely healing, or could offer some extreme healing for some folks. They're just comfort in knowing that person is of your faith, and though the message of your faith may be that abortions are terrible, there's at least one person who believes that's not true, and that you are not a terrible person.
That's amazing.
Yes, that's a big
Faith
deal.
Alive maybe has
Faith
changed
Aloud,
their name.
yep.
Aloud?
Yep, Faith Aloud.
Faith Aloud. And that's specifically to talk about abortion?
Mm-hmm. Pro-choice people.
Y'all, Faith Aloud and those other...
Exhale,
thank you for...
backline,
just want to thank all the elders who have been... I mean, I've never heard of any of those, but what phenomenal resources those are to help people reduce shame.
Mm-hmm.
And,
And then, there's a lot. We have lots of resources for folks. There's also the Abortion Connection Network, which is amazing. And they have these great, we give them as handouts. Basically, it's you are a good woman, and that you're not, or you're a good man. Because the partner support that goes into many of the people that we're working with is completely untouched. This is like uncharted territory. And if I had a savings account that would allow for it, I would do some research into how do we better support the support people of people who are choosing terminations, because it's just this like untouched.
And if do you have like a one or two pieces of wisdom for how to support them right now?
Oh, just ask, just talk about it.
Just ask what?
Ask how are you feeling about all of this?
Okay. So if you have somebody in your life that is a partner or support person of somebody who's having an abortion, like literally break the silence.
Totally.
And say, how's it going?
How do you feel about it?
Yeah.
And when I have the opportunity to speak with partners and you give space for that, often it's very surprising what comes up. I mean, much of it is, I just want to be able to support her in her decision. Whatever that person needs I will support. But there are folks who are feeling really sad. Especially people who have parented already. I think that can be, we don't give space for papas and dads to talk, period. And
right, we're
stop.
partners.
We're partners.
Yeah.
We just don't give space for that in our communities across the board. And so I feel like abortion is just one more layer that you'd have to get through to be able to access how someone actually feels about a thing. So
yeah. So that's it's a simple but very clear thing people can do.
Physically, from a healing perspective, there's not a lot required.
Okay.
So we've dealt a little bit with the emotional piece. Most folks don't need it, or if they need it, they don't need it long term. So what we see is that people who have abortions are exceptionally okay if that decision is theirs, if they make it on their own. If they're ever forced or coerced, or they feel pressure from an outside force, then yes, there's some sort of residual something that comes up, whether it's probably not regret, but it may come up as a deep sense of loss. So there's that. But from a physical perspective, most folks are back doing their activities of daily life within a couple of days.
Wow.
And they're just tired.
Yeah.
Which is, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So we tell folks to go home and take care of themselves by putting up their feet and staying on a good ibuprofen schedule.
Yeah.
Deal with cramps, but that's really the end of it.
Thanks for talking about that a little bit.
Yeah. It's not, there's no cutting, there's no surgery. We use the word a surgical procedure simply because that's the medical language for it, but it's not what you think. It's not, so.
And if somebody wanted to understand more of, more of the specifics, because we have a little bit more time and I want to move on, but what would be, do you have a particular resource that you would send people to?
Yeah, go to mainefamilyplanning.org.
Okay, great.
Yep, or PlannedParenthood.org is fine too. Both of them will tell you exactly how it goes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for talking about all that.
Anytime.
So I want to just shift to kind of this bigger theme of deep choice across sexual, because we started talking about sexual. You work in a sexuality boutique. You are working with parents who are choosing to be parents, and you are working with women who are choosing to get an abortion, right? And the theme is so strong around. It's not like it's not just about healthcare. It's about agency around my own body.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, that right there is what more people need to be able to access, that sense of agency. And so when you're because our sexual lives are so long and often start in a traumatic way.
Let's just slow that down.
Yeah.
Because our sexual lives are so long and often start in a traumatic way.
Yeah, it's sort of like this, okay, I'm going to do some healing, and then I'm going to try something new, or I want to have a vibrator for the first time, or I'm pregnant, or I'm going to be a papa, or I'm going to be a parent in some way, or whoa, I can't be a parent in some way. There's this constant sort of like one step up, couple steps into the healing, one step in, couple steps into the healing. And so I think that the trauma piece is a really important part to talk about, because sexual abuse is so prevalent in our communities. We're working with folks oftentimes for whom they don't see that as something they need to work through, right? Like it's just something that happened. It's something that has been normalized over the years. And so making, what am I trying to say? So making deep choices isn't accessible. Like it's really hard to make really healthy, deep choices when the first experience you've had with sex has been somehow not okay.
Right, and the statistic around sexual abuse, particularly early childhood sexual abuse, is pretty phenomenal. I can't recall it right now, but I know it's...
Yeah, I mean, I know it's 1 in 4 women will be sexually assaulted or molested in their lives, and 1 in 7 men, but I don't know if those statistics have changed in the last... Right,
so we're literally sort of saying, like, yeah, deep choice is a great thing, but let's put it within the context of people's realities.
Yeah, totally.
And, like, what's been covered up, what's been necessary to cover up, and how that's, how we've adapted to be able to try to keep ourselves safe, or just manage in a body that maybe hasn't felt safe.
Yep.
And in a family that hasn't felt safe, in a community that hasn't felt safe. And now, you know, for so many of us in a country that hasn't, well, not now, like so many people haven't felt safe in this country all along.
Right.
But just the intensification of that.
Totally. And it's sort of that, like, one drop of sexual abuse and the ripple effects for years and years and years that go on from that. It's like, it may feel like a drop in the ocean, but the end result is a tsunami. And so the end result might be that I'm working with a patient who dissociates during a procedure because the last time they were touched was in a really terrible way. Like, okay, so how do we as caregivers deal with knowing about that?
Right.
Or we're working with someone who has some genital mutilation. Okay, so how do I heal? How do I help that situation not be traumatic?
Right.
But also then how do I teach and educate our staff about that? How do we take care of ourselves in that situation? And so, so I feel like anytime there's sexual trauma, we're working with, I mean, you're looking it's someone's entire lifetime of working through that and working with that. And then how, because trauma is so common, we then sort of traumatize situations that don't require it. So an abortion doesn't need to be a traumatic event.
I see, right.
Birth doesn't need to be a traumatic event.
Right.
Orgasm doesn't need to be a traumatic event.
Yep.
Shopping for your own fun, sexy toys doesn't have to be a traumatic event. And in fact, probably we could say shouldn't.
Right.
And so I feel like because it's sex, like we get so weird about talking about sex, but at the end, all of this sort of braids back to having healthy sexual relationships in a body that may not have begun that way.
Yeah.
So, it's big.
It is so big, and there's so many places that are, like, I feel like we're continuing just to have to learn so much about how to create healing environments and healing conditions as practitioners or as communities or in our families to be able to break the silence in a way that's not re-traumatizing and create conditions for a body to heal.
Yep.
And there's just so much more that needs to be done around that.
Yeah.
You know? I'm not sure if I have anything else to say about that.
I just know that I know they all intersect.
Yeah.
I don't always know how to make it better, safer. I mean, we do everything that we can do both here, Birthroots, the shop that I work at, for Maine Family Planning. Like, we do everything that we can to make sure that folks are feeling connected and loved. But there's I always feel like there's another, an abyss worth of love that is somehow, like, if we could just access the abyss of love, then it would be so much more,
right.
That would just make it so much easier to exist as a sexual being.
Yeah.
In a body that, I mean, we have a long time.
We have a long time. And there's a lot of opportunity in that long time, potentially for pleasure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is, I'd like to think that that's our birthright, but it isn't for everybody's experience.
Right. And even thinking about, like, birth control. So obviously what we do in family planning is we want to get folks started on a method that in the past would be specifically to keep you from getting pregnant, right? But if we were to reframe that into, you can get on a method of birth control so you can have really hot, amazing, fun sex on your terms when you want to without having to worry about it. What?
That's a whole different, like, that is a whole different way to say it.
Different ballgame, right? Like, if you were to talk, and I mean, I talk about sex all the time, and I talk about it with strangers because that's my job.
Which is freaking awesome, and
totally
thank you for doing that.
My absolute pleasure. I get it that being able to say to a stranger, like, I totally want you to have hot sex.
Right, and they're like,
what? I'm like, maybe not with me. Like,
yeah.
I just, in your lifetime, I would love for sex to not be fraught with worry, or shame or hurt. And there are pockets in one's life where those things sort of pop, and I both personally and professionally have seen it happen, where if trauma has happened, birth can be a re-traumatizing event, even though it may be a really awesome thing that you were looking forward to. So a termination, another place where it can pop, or watching a child grow. Ooh, low battery.
Yep. Oh, low battery. That's all right. We got like 10 minutes left, so we're good.
So that, I just feel like there's lots of places where I wish I could sort of insert, like, the work that you do, or how many times after a procedure that I've witnessed a person need to just be able to come back into their body.
Yeah.
Like, how do I do that? Who do I talk to make that happen? Or can we get some acupuncture going on in here?
Yeah, exactly. Like, just continuing to integrate
arts,
the heal. Yeah, absolutely.
And we joke a little bit now and then about how at work, where, like, if we could just offer spa services in the recovery room, like, can we give someone a manicure after this is done, or a pedicure, or a foot rub, or a head rub?
Yes,
or like,
yes.
The answer is yes, we can do that, but people don't necessarily want to align themselves, blah, 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 blah. I mean, the narrative goes.
But isn't that a cool, like, that's part of what I feel like this whole thing is about, is to just sort of go up against that edge, right? And sort of say, like, what can we be doing that we think we can't do?
Yes.
But we actually could figure this out.
Yeah.
Right? So how can we have foot soaks in the aftercare room? Like, we get a bunch of tubs, we get some salts, and like a kettle.
Yeah. And an electric tea kettle. Game on. You're hired.
Or like whatever. But I think it's like a paradigm shift, because we've, things have been done a certain way for so long, and we want to be able to hold on to those ways of being, because people have fought so hard to get here, to be able to even talk about this right now in this moment.
Yes.
And so there's an unconscious reluctance to go further, because, for lots of reasons, but I think that is part of the calling right now.
Yes.
In all ways, just like, how are we doing what we're doing? I don't think it's about adding more to what we do, because I'm not interested in, like, overworking already overworked people. That's not my point. But my point is to be able to take those moments of reflection individually as a practitioner or organizationally, and say, hey, how can we shift up the system a little bit so that we're more well? And are there simple ways we can integrate care and presence and love that are free, or very low cost, into how we do things.
Right.
And it's not about we've done anything wrong, and it's not about adding tons of resources to it. I think it's about just, like, letting our imagination sort of revision, just continue to revision how we do what we do.
Yep. And in the meantime, taking care of each other, right? So there's this process as well around, so we have all of this energy that goes into our patients and our parents here and our customers at the store, and there's a lot that goes out, but also there has to be space for, like, being able to maintain that and sustain that, and so how we take care of each other as well. And so I think when you asked at the beginning, like, what would what would you want people to know about an abortion care facility is that we laugh our asses off and we joke with each other, and it's not it's not all like, oh, we have such a sad job. Like, our job is awesome. It rocks. And so, like, being able to sustain each other as well.
Beautiful.
And add that love to each other is really important.
Beautiful.
In our job too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we're going to start to wrap up here. Y'all, thanks for all for listening.
Yeah,
it's great
thanks.
to have y'all out there supporting Shannon's work in the world, and all the people who are doing the work that you're doing in all the realms. Birthroots and Maine Family Planning and those organizations, Planned Parenthood and Faith Aloud. I think the question I want to end with is, and maybe it feels redundant, but I like it as a question, is if there's anything you wish people would be talking more about, or like if there's anything that you just would like to that we're not talking enough about in any of the realms that you work with, or even in your personal opinion, just your life.
Yeah, sure.
What would you?
It's that piece of, these are not different people. People who come to the shop and want to,
The sexuality boutique, you mean?
Yeah, who come to the store, who want to buy something fun and sexy, are the same people who have babies, are the same people who have abortions. Like, this is actually just us.
Yeah.
As a community, as a world, right? Like, we are all doing this. So if you have had an abortion, if you've had a baby, if you have gone and wanted to have some really fun sex, or get to know your own body, like, everybody else is doing that too. And I mean, not everybody. That's fine. But a lot of people are doing that too, and so you're not alone. Yeah. I had a patient ask me once, basically like, why are you being so nice to me? And it resonated for me. It has resonated with me for a really long time. And why I am so nice to you, anyone, is because you are me, and I am you. Like, we are all together in this, and we're all connected. And so just know that there's at least one person on the planet who believes that. and that's what sex ed has taught me. That's what reproductive justice has taught me, is that we're all in it.
Beautiful.
The end.
The end. We're all in it together.
Yeah.
I am you, you are me. We're in it
Pretty
together. Well, let's do that. Let's stay connected this week. Let's stay connected tomorrow. Let's stay connected at all of the marches.
Yes.
This weekend.
Going to Washington.
You're going to Washington. Yeah. I'll be in New York City. Hive will be marching with a contingent of like wellness practitioners and healing practitioners in the New York March. So really excited about that. You guys, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Stay strong. We're not alone. You're not alone. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you for all the work you do.
Thinking that I belonged in the Hive. That's
Does
she
belong in the Hive?
Oh, shut up.
She's like, I can't. Tomorrow night, I'm so excited. I'll be down in Providence, Rhode Island with Kathy Plord. She has written she has edited an anthology called Making Out Like a Virgin.
We sell it.
You sell it.
Yes.
Making Out Like a Virgin, Healing After Sexual Trauma. And I am really looking forward to talking to her, to talking about the process, talking about the stories in that book, and why this book. So tune in tomorrow night. That's going to be at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Super excited to see her. She's a friend of mine, old friend of yours.
Awesome work.
And then a whole bunch of great stuff this weekend that you can check out on our calendar. We love you. Take care, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for what you do.
Yeah, thanks for what you do.